over the course of a certain number of years, the use must be open and notorious, continuous, hostile, and exclusive. Paying taxes on the property often serves as evidence of use. If that happens, then the person can go to court, file for adverse possession, and literally become the new owner of that property. This doesn't happen very often, obviously. Okay, a few more definitions and terms you need to know for the transfer of ownership. You need to know what a freehold estate is, what a fee simple absolute estate is, and you need to know, these are all freehold estates, but you need to know the definitions of them. Defeasible estate, fee simple determinable, fee simple subject to executory limitation, a finite estate limited, which is limited to lifetimes, such as a life estate, which is what they call pour autre vie, a French term meaning for another's life. So in other words, the estate lasts as long as this person is alive, or it could even be a person not involved in the transaction. Okay? You need to know what a leasehold estate is, and a different leasehold estate, such as a estate for years, a periodic tenancy estate at will, a tenancy or a tenancy at will, and an estate at sufferance. You need to know under title what tenants in common means. You need to know the joint tenancy with rights or survivorship, and you need to know what deeds, different types of deeds, and which is the highest form of deed, which again is a general warranty deed, and the lowest form of deed that gives you the least amount of rights, which is a quitclaim deed. So under transfer of ownership, again, the title theory versus deed of trust theory states. In Nevada, we use a deed of trust theory, basically. Some people still call it a title theory, but in reality, it's a deed of trust theory. Some states use a lien theory. You need to know the difference between the two. So you need to know what a deed of reconveyance is, which is the deed that's filed once you pay off a mortgage or the buyer pays off his mortgage. Okay? A lien, different types of liens, tax liens, mortgages, mechanics liens, are all types of liens that need to be probably paid off at close of escrow in order for the seller to deliver good marketable title. However, it does not mean that the buyer cannot buy a property with liens attached to it. It's just they have to be disclosed, and the buyer has to be aware and agree to do that. But it rarely happens. Most of the time, it's required that they take the property subject to the liens being paid off. Okay, some restrictions and encumbrance. You need to know what a deed restriction is. You need to know what an easement is, and the different types of easements, such as expressed easements, implied easements, prescriptive easements, appurtenant easements, and easements in gross. So a little bit more about public and private land use. Townships are made of a 6 miles squared to 36 sections. 6 miles squared, not 6 square miles. All right? Sometimes you'll get confused on that. So you need to remember it's 6 miles squared. Okay? Again, eminent domain is the power of the government to take private property and convert it into the public use. Condemnation is the process, the legal process they use to do that. Private land use versus restrictions. Remember that deed restrictions and covenants, conditions, and restrictions, or CC&Rs on a property, whether there's a common interest community or not, there can be CC&Rs on a property, but they're not the same as deed restrictions. Deed restrictions run with the land. CC&Rs can be changed by the HOA, homeowners association, for example, or the homeowners themselves get together. Okay, now we're going to cover some key terms that were covered under ownership. And I'd like you to be able to study these terms and definitions. It'll help you greatly with your real estate career and also possibly on the exam. Okay? So you need to know what freehold estate means. You need to know what leasehold estate means. You need to know that fee simple absolute is the highest form of a freehold estate. You need to know that a life estate is for another person's lifetime, or pour autre vie for another life. You need to know what a defeasible estate is, the different types of deeds, and that a general warranty deed is the highest form of deed, and a quitclaim is the lowest form of deed. You also need to know that deed restrictions are private agreements that are on deeds, and the different types of liens, such as mortgage liens, tax liens, mechanics liens, that can be placed on a property. You need to know all the different types of easements that we just covered. And you need to know the definition of eminent domain and the definition of condemnation, which is the process of taking and using eminent domain. This concludes our course on ownership, and please don't forget to download all the course materials, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.